Durdle Magic. Thank you for tuning in to Durdle Magic. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell if you like the content you see here today, and leave a like and share the video with someone you might think is interested. Leaving those likes really helps us out, but another way to help us out is by using our TCG Player affiliate link below. If you're looking for singles, sealed product, or gaming accessories, please consider using our link to support the channel. We also have some playmats at inkgaming.com. Go ahead and hit the link in the description to check those out. Alright, let's grab some spells and Durdle with some magic. Hello and welcome back to Durdle Magic. Today we have the deck tech for Sakashima and Alena. What could these two legendary creatures possibly have in common? Well, they might care about enter the battlefield effects. For Sakashima, it comes into play as a copy of anything you control, and the legend rule does not apply, so you can copy legendary things. That is a creature anyway. Alena, when something comes into play, you can get red mana to your mana pool equal to the power it has. Again, mostly caring about creatures there. But between the two, there are some interesting things we can do in blue and red for a blink deck. So how would we build a deck around these characters here? Well, there's a few things we can focus on here. Basically, we want creatures and other permanents that have enter the battlefield abilities, so we want to focus on having mainly creatures that do that, considering both of our commanders care about creatures. Spells are abilities that can blink them in and out of play, and some payoffs for those abilities besides their triggered abilities, and some combos we can use to try to close out a game. Also, there's some expensive options in this deck tech, and we'll go over some budget options you can consider for your own deck if you don't have the finances or those cards readily available to you. First up, we have the enter the battlefield effects. So what creatures would we put in this deck? Well, it's a few different things we can do here, and they can cross over a number of different lines. Firstly, we can have things like Inferno Titan and Baron Tellurian Archmage. They provide removal, and they can provide us some ways to finish the game out, which we'll explore later when we get to the combo section. There's also some creatures that come into play and steal stuff from our opponents, either temporarily or permanently, and give us some bonus for doing so. Then we have two creatures in particular that can provide us tutors in this deck, and these tutors are probably better overall unless you have access to maybe Mystical Tutor, and if you can, work it in Gamble. Imperial Recruiter, for instance, can get us a creature of power 2 or less from the deck to our hand, and Spellseeker can get us an instant or sorcery spell from the deck CMC 2 or less to our hand, and those can both fetch us different combo pieces, which again we'll talk about later in the video. Next up, we have Make 'em Blink. Using abilities and effects to blink our creatures to get more ETB triggers is what the deck's all going to be about here, so let's go over some of them. First up, we have Thassa Deep Dwelling. Acts just like a Conjurer's Closet. At the end of our turn, we get to exile something we control and return it to the battlefield straight away. Plus, she also has the extra ability of tapping down stuff, but it's that blink ability we're really going after here, in a hard-to-destroy permanent. And then we have the classic card Deadeye Navigator, Blink Lord Extraordinaire. For 1 in blue, it can blink the soul bonded creature that it's soul bonded to, as well as itself. However, soul bond is an ETB ability itself, so look out for things like Tulper Orb. It's also very good for getting infinite combos going, so again, we'll talk about that at the end of the video, because the deck has 5 of them and it can be built to have more. And the last card I want to talk about here is Nephalia Smuggler. It has an expensive blink effect, 1-time use only, 3 blue tap, so only once per round of the table. However, it is an immediate blink, so your creature goes out, it comes back in, and this is a repeatable effect over the course of every turn around the table. So it being low drop paired with the fact that it'll be able to blink our stuff over and over again through the course of a game does give it a lot of value in this deck. But that's it for the abilities on creatures. Let's go over to the spells that help us blink our permanents. In this section, we make 'em blink again. Going to use instant spells and some other spells to help us get more ETBs out of our creatures, because that's what we do here. First up, we have Ghostly Flicker. One of my favorite blink effects of all time, one of my favorite blink spells. It can blink creatures, artifacts, and or lands, which isn't too important in this deck, but if you want to maybe untap some lands if you can, or if you want some landfall abilities if you're using those, This card is fantastic for that. Then we have a card like Essence Flux. For just blue, we can blink something out and back into play. Instant speed, of course, and if you happen to have a couple of spirits in there like Deadeye Navigator, it comes back a little bit stronger, although counters aren't too useful in this deck if we're going to blink stuff in and out. Lastly, we have Illusionist Stratagem. This one blinks 2 of our creatures, and only 2 of those creatures, but it also draws us a card. This can also be part of a combo, of course, just like everything so far, but the card draw is not optional, so if you want to use this in a combo, you have to be prepared for that downside. Then we have cards like Teferi's Time Twist. 1 in blue, an instant. It blinks your creature, but it doesn't come back until the end of turn, so this card is better for dodging board wipes or getting more ETBs anyway, but specifically because it's so slow, you want to use this to save a creature if you are facing down a board wipe, whereas everything else can be used for spot removal. Another card I want to talk about is Release to the Wind. This isn't specifically a blink card, but it also kind of doubles as removal, especially if your opponents forget about it. It says 2 blue, instant, exile target creature. Its controller may cast that card from exile without paying its mana cost, so basically free, whenever they can, which is usually sorcery speed. There are a lot of people, myself included, who have forgotten about that part of the clause and just thought the creature was gone forever. So you can also save one of your creatures like this, kind of like Teferi's Time Twist, where it can dodge a Wrath, and then you just cast it for free. So it's almost essentially the same thing, but can be a little bit more tricky. Alright, so EBTs are all well and good and everything, but how are we going to win the game? Well, that's where the payoffs come in. And by payoffs, I mean burn everything to the ground. I mean, let's use Agent of Treachery to steal everything. But let's take a look at how we're going to win with this deck. Boom! Like I said, we're going to burn things to the ground. Classic cards here. New edition, Terror of the Peaks. First off, we have Porphyros, God of the Forge. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under our control, deals 2 damage to each of our opponents. Plus, it can pump our creatures if we feel like being a little bit more aggro about it. Next up, we have Impact Tremors, which is a lot like Porphyros, but a lot less scary. Does only half the damage, but you can go infinite with that too with infinite blinks. Next is Warstorm Surge, same thing, except the creature deals the damage, so if you do manage to get lifelink into the deck somehow, you're also golden that way. Then we have Inferno Titan, classic card at this point. Comes into play, splits a lightning bolt amongst any number of targets. Planeswalkers, creatures, or players get rid of it all. And Terror of the Peaks is a lot more like Warstorm Surge, except it says any other creature that comes into play. If you saw my last video, they each trigger for each other, but not for themselves. So do keep that in mind when you use Terror of the Peaks. And last but not least, the 5 combos in this deck that will win you the game. Infinite, of course. However, this deck can hold many other combos. If you'd like to get some suggestions or take a look at the full deck list, of course, look into the description below, find the link, and go ahead and check that out. But for this deck in particular, let's get into those 5 combos. One of our first combos is a classic one with Kiki-Jiki and Zealous Conscripts or Deceiver Exarch. We did not use Splinter Twin in the deck because it's not a creature, and it doesn't have an ETB, but the Exarch and the Zealous Conscripts do, so they're also useful in the deck if we can't get our hands on Kiki-Jiki. However, we can tier for Kiki-Jiki with the Imperial Recruiter. Imperial Recruiter can also get us the Exarch, but it cannot get us the Zealous Conscripts. Another classic combo here is Dualcaster Mage, and then any of the following: Twin Flame, Cackling Counterpart, or Quasi Duplicate. You do have to have another creature in play to target first, so you have that creature in play, cast one of the 3 cards, hold priority to yourself, control from Magic Online, by the way, cast Dualcaster Mage, it'll come into play, copying the spell, and then you copy the Dualcaster Mage to put another token into play, and so on and so forth. You can also do this with Naru Meha, except you will need Sakashima the Imposter if you want infinite Naru Mehas. You will need her to copy the spell just like Dualcaster Mage does. If you don't have Sakashima out, you won't get infinite Naru Mehas. You will be able to choose which one to kill based on the legend rule. Always choose the new copy. That way you can continue to copy the spell, but at that point you will need a second target in order for you to get infinite tokens of the other target. For that combo in particular, Only a Twin Flame that has one at least Strive payment into it will work. Another classic and probably overdone combo at this point is Deadeye Navigator and Peregrine Drake. As long as you have 3 lands in play and these 2 cards on the battlefield, you can soul bond with the Peregrine Drake, blink Deadeye Navigator if you can to soul bond it to the Drake, and then you blink the Drake and you get infinite mana. You just keep blinking it. At that point, just add something into the loop after the fact, like Inferno Titan, or if you already have Pulverized Impact Tremors on the battlefield, just bring out the table. Conversely, you can also just sit there and do more value ETBs. They're both really good in the deck. Deadeye Navigator already does the blinking thing, and Peregrine Drake will untap your land so you can continue to cast a bunch of other things. And then we have the last combo in the deck, the classic Naru Meha Blink combo, where we can get infinite ETBs. Basically, you have something like Terror of the Peaks or Inferno Titan out, cast one of the blink effects, Displace, Ghostly Flicker, copy it with Naru Meha, and then when she copies the spell when she comes into play, just target her and the other creature, and you're off to the races. As long as there's no response, you win the game. Okay, so admittedly, some of the cards in the deck are pretty expensive, so let's explore some budget options in case you want to, make this deck for a little bit cheaper and you want to make it for yourself in paper, because digital is cheaper, and I don't want to lead anyone astray. So while a lot of the blink machinations in the deck are pretty cheap, I wouldn't worry too much about those. You can get most of it for pretty cheap dollars. The burn stuff does tend to run a little bit more expensive, Porphyros in particular. Terror of the Peaks might be a few bucks here and there. So let's go over some of the burn stuff. I found in my search for budget cards for this deck, Goblin Chain Whirler and Daggercaster are very good, and you can pick up both for less than $1 TCG at the time of this recording. And those are very good. They hit, not only can they hit your opponents, they can also wipe the board. So they may even be superior for board control. And honestly, I should have tested them out in the deck because I actually like Daggercaster a lot. It's one of my favorite uncommon red cards. So if you need extra burn, you can't afford or don't have a Pulveros, that's a good replacement for you. Another card that tends to be a bit expensive right now is Panharmonicon. If you really want to double up on those ETB effects, but you can't afford a Panharmonicon, but you still want something in there, there is Strionic Resonator. It doesn't do as much and you only get one use of it, and it does have to be activated. However, it can definitely provide whatever the Panharmonicon does as far as a value engine is concerned. Not necessarily for infinite combos, but you can still get something out of it, and it's much, much cheaper than the Panharmonicon in paper. And now to address Sakashima. It is currently going for between $17 and $20 TCG player, and that is quite expensive, especially for a lot of people if you weren't lucky enough to pull down a box or a pack, right? So my recommendation for a replacement to lead the deck for it is Brynlin the Moonkraken. It cares about enter the battlefield effects for itself. It also cares about for converted mana cost 6 or greater things, so it may skew the deck a little bit towards the higher end, and then you get extra ETB effects. Plus, it's a 6/8, so Alena will definitely care about that power, and we usually want to get her down first. So you put Brynlin into play, trigger it, resolve it, do what have you, tap Alena for 6 red mana, and then just go ahead and casually cast an Inferno Titan. Okay, so that is the Sakashima and Alena deck tech. Let me know your thoughts about the deck in the comments below, and if you want the list to the deck, there's a link into the description. Go ahead and check that out. And if you want to make this in paper for yourself, please consider using the TCG Player affiliate link in the description below. Costs you nothing extra and it helps out the channel. I hope very much that you enjoyed this deck tech. Again, always open to suggestions, and I'll see you for the next series of the Commander Legends Commanders and the next deck tech.